We begin this Shabbos with Parshas Shemos, and this is the first parsha of Jews going into Golus. Although Yaakov and his sons came down to Mitzrayim in Parshas Vayigash, and they're there in Vayechi, the Shibud and the Perech and the torture and the pain begins to be discussed in this week's parsha. And by next week's parsha, Va'era, we have the Makos. In Parshas Bo, we have the last three Makos. The Jews leave Mitzrayim, and in Parshas Beshalach, we have Kriyas Yamsuf. In Parshas Yisro, we already have the Aseres Hadibros at Har Sinai. So we begin the Chumash Shemos with what we know is going to be the roots of the development of the Jewish people as a nation. It's taking form in Mitzrayim. The Zohar HaKadosh talks about the idea that in Mitzrayim the Jews were like a fetus in the womb of its mother. It was getting ready to be born. Uber be'imo. And so there's so much to discuss and talk about in this week's parsha. Moshe, how did Moshe become Moshe? What did he do to become Moshe? The Shibud itself, why did the Jews go to Mitzrayim, which has already its genesis in Genesis. It has its genesis in Bereshis. At the Bris Bein Absarim, the Rebbeinu Shalom told Avraham Avinu, "Kiger yezarach be'eretz lo lahem ba'avodim v'inu osam abba me'oshana." Your children will be in exile for 400 years, and that itself becomes a subject. It was only 210 years, and they will be tortured and pained, and then they will leave with much wealth, and then they will go with Dor Revi'i Yashuvu Heina, the fourth generation will return back to Eretz Yisrael. So from Parshas Lech Lecha now to Parshas Shemos, many weeks later, we now have the Kiyum. We now see that God's Bris Bein Absarim with Avraham Avinu is beginning to unfold, and the Jews are in the Golus of Mitzrayim. There's the snare. There's Moshe talking to Paro. There's so many things, and not to skip over Chas v'Shalom, the whole issue of Moshe Rabbeinu asking Hashem, "What is your name?" And the whole dialogue at the snare. My name is Yud Kei Vav Kei, and my name is Aleph Hey Yud Kei. But and there's all that whole discussion, which Ramban Nachmanides talks about in great depth. What do all these names mean, and what did Moshe Rabbeinu want when he said, "God, what's your name?" So there's a lot to talk about in this week's parsha. I wanted to touch on two subjects this morning, which we'll see if we can actually connect the two. There are two Rashis in this week's parsha that are particularly relevant to the analysis, I believe, of our generation, which still finds itself in exile, but in a turmoil of an exile. First of all, there's the turmoil of we're in Eretz Yisrael. We see the kibbutz Goliath in front of our eyes. It is a kibbutz Goliath. Nobody can deny that if they're rational. There's a tremendous kibbutz Goliath. We're watching a miracle. At the same time, we're witnessing tremendous chaos in Eretz Yisrael, politically, culturally, religiously. We see this chaos in the whole world, especially what we saw or people witnessed yesterday in Washington, D.C. There's a world in chaos. For Jews, this chaos affects us not only physically, but affects us beruchnius. What can we get from this week's parsha about the chaos and how can we get out of this kind of chaos. And what we're going to speak about today, the two Rashis, ties in with the Das Tavunos and the Ramchal that we've talked about so much, the Guf and the Neshama. The Guf is our external feature, but that's not really where things are going on. Things are going on in the Panemius, inside us. That's the Neshama. The Neshama is not only a spiritual creation, it is also, it controls the physical, our physical world. We talked so many times about the neshama, chas v'sholem, is removed from the guf. The eyeballs are still there, but they can't see. The ears are there, but they can't hear. The mouth is there, but it can't talk. The brain tissue is there, but it can't think. The heart, it's there, but it can't beat. And with the neshama inside, the neshama gives the life. Vayitz Hashem Elokim es ha'adam min ha'adama. God formed man from the dust of the earth. Vayipach ba'apav nishmas chayim, and God put the breath of life in him, which is his neshama. Vayi adam nefesh chayim, and with that breath of life, that neshama, man became a living being. So we've talked many times in the Das Tavunos about the Ramchal's Das Tavunos about. We talked about it this week. The guf was created from hastoras panim. The neshama was created from ha'oras panim. And the ha'oras panim is inside, the hastoras panim is outside, but percolating inside a hastoras panim is always a ha'oras panim. This idea of guf and neshama, but for purposes of the parasha today, the guf obviously is the chitzonius. It is the outside of our existence. It's our physical body that everyone can see. And then we have our panemius, what is inside us, our thoughts, our seichel, our neshamas. And those are two different things. The panemius, what's inside us, and the chitzonius, that which is outside and superficial to us. We go back to the Eitz Hadas Tov V'Ra, where I believe we've mentioned this more than once. The Rambam's commentary in his Moreh Nevuchim about the Eitz Hadas Tov V'Ra. The Rambam says very early on in the Moreh Nevuchim, the Guide for the Perplexed, when he's defining words, he says, he defines the word tov as the original source and true meaning of the word tov versus ra. And he discusses that in the context of the Eitz Hadas Tov V'Ra. Adam HaRishon originally lived in a world, before he ate from the Eitz Hadas Tov V'Ra, he lived in a world that when he looked at things and he was thinking about things, he defined things as emes versus sheker, whether something is true or something is false. Now today, people start complaining about that, and they say, well, is it true or is it false? Is some kind of, they have this word black and white thinking, and that has all kinds of psychological ramifications to it, black and white thinking. We'll leave that aside. I've given shiurim about that. But there's emes versus sheker. And that's the world that Adam HaRishon lived in before the chet of the Eitz Hadas Tov V'Ra. The Rambam says that Adam HaRishon, when he ate from the Eitz Hadas Tov V'Ra, he gave up that world of emes and sheker, and now began looking at the world as tov and ra. He began looking at the world in a superficial way. Is it pretty or is it ugly? Do I desire it or do I not desire it? Whereas before the Eitz Hadas Tov V'Ra, a situation may have arisen in Adam HaRishon's life, and he would then trigger seichel. should I or shouldn't I, which is based on, is this an emistika way to live or a sheker way of living? And he exchanged that or confused himself by bringing in tov and ra, which means pretty versus ugly. He was now beginning to look at superficial things more than he was looking at the inside of things. He was not willing any longer to pierce to the roots of an issue. He was looking only at the superficial facts. And he became a superficial person. And this is why the Rambam says, if you read the Psukim, it says that right before Chava ate from the Eitz Hadas Tov Ra, it says she looked at the tree and she saw that it was a very pretty tree and it looked like the fruits would be very sumptuous, and she couldn't hold herself back and she ate from the tree. This is the progression of the Yetzer Hara of the Eitz Hadas Tov Ra. It looks good, the fruit looks nice, the tree looks nice. If it looks nice and I think it's going to taste good, I'm going to eat it. But 1 second, seichel clicks in. If you eat it, it's poison. Okay, if you eat from this fruit, it's laced with a poison. You are going to bring death upon yourself. But that seichel click did not occur. And they end up eating from something that God said is poison and it will cause you death. But if it looks good, I'm going to do it. Now, there's all kinds of it looks good and I desire it and I don't care if it would kill me and I'll do it anyways. Smokers, all the people that smoke, they're all going to live forever because nobody dies of smoking. And if they die of smoking, it's not going to be me, it'll be someone else. So they have already printed on the package, and some stores have on top of the boxes in which they keep cigarettes, it says it brightly on top, that smoking will kill you. It doesn't say smoking may kill you, it says smoking will kill you. Yamashayir, a person has a taiva, and he deep down knows that this is going to, very good chance, kill him, or certainly make him very sick, and he desires it. He enjoys it. He needs the smoke. And he's not willing to seichel trigger and say, no, this is not good. This is going to kill me. So there's, for people who can't understand how in the world can Adam Harishon possibly and Chava have eaten from the fruit when God said, if you eat, you will die. How is it possible for someone to do something when they know if they do it, they will die? Not only do they know they will die, this is God telling them they will die. Not the FDA. God is telling Adam and Chava, you will die. He's telling Adam, you will die if you eat from this fruit. And they look at it and it's pretty and it's nice and they eat from it. So the idea today that the FDA has all over the packages, you will die if you smoke, smoking causes death. It's Eitz Hadas Tov Ra. People cannot overcome their desires and trigger seichel. So man, through the chet of the Eitz Hadas Tov Ra, became a superficial person. The tikkun of the Eitz Hadas Tov Ra, which everyone were trying to do through the Gili Hayichud that we talk about in the Das Tavunos, that we're all trying to get back. Everybody talks about we need to get back to the point of Adam Rishon Kodem Achet. So many Sforim talk about this concept. We need to get back to Adam Rishon Kodem Achet. And people talk about we need to do the tikkun of the chet of the Eitz Hadas Tov Ra. What's the tikkun of the chet of the Eitz Hadas Tov Ra? Tikkun of the chet of Eitz Hadas Tov Ra is to stop being such superficial people and to start focusing not on what something looks like, but what something is beneath the surface. Is it true? Is it false? Is it moral? Is it immoral? Without the superficial connotation that if it looks good and it tastes good, it's okay. The tikkun of the Eitz Hadas Tov Ra begins with people stop being so superficial and start getting beneath the surface of life and understanding that beneath the surface there lies all kinds of things that need to be analyzed in terms of truth, false, moral, immoral. And then people get attacked because they are black and white thinkers, Yemashiyah. And there's plenty of room, as I say in many shum, there's plenty of room for gray, the gray area they call it. There's plenty of room for gray area in life. Your wife wants to go on vacation. She wants to go up north because she likes to be in amongst the trees. And you want to go down south because you like the water. And there's no right and wrong. There's no truth and falsity there. That's a place. There's a gray area in life. Where do we go on vacation? Okay, so you need to discuss it, come to some kind of compromise. 2 days up north, 2 days down south, whatever it is. There's a gray area. Do you want to have eggs for breakfast? Or would you rather have a tuna fish sandwich? Okay, there's no right and wrong there, unless someone's chas v'shalom allergic to one of the foods, and then we get into a right and wrong. But there's a lot of gray areas in life. But for example, the Torah doesn't have a gray area. What do I mean by that? Is avodah zarah an absolute prohibition? Sure. Is there a gray area to avodah zarah? No. The sun is off limits, but maybe the moon. Maybe you can worship the moon. Maybe the moon is a gray area. Or you can't worship the moon or the sun, but how about bowing down to a tree? Maybe that's a gray area. There are no gray areas here. And the black and white thinking in these places is what the Torah requires of us. Maybe Mashiach is coming, maybe he's not coming. Maybe there is something called Mashiach, maybe there isn't something called Mashiach. You know, we have to be open to this possibility in the gray area. Chas v'shalom, person's a kaifa b'Torah. So there's places for gray areas, and then there's places where gray areas are absolutely forbidden in Torah. So we have to be able to look at life and look at situations and determine, am I looking at this thing and making my decisions in a superficial way and not really looking beneath the surface of right versus wrong, in which case I'm in Eitz Hadas Tov V'Ra territory. If I want to overcome Eitz Hadas Tov V'Ra territory, then I want to pierce through the superficiality and I want to understand what's really going on beneath the surface so I can make a decision. Let's now turn to this week's parsha. Moshe Rabbeinu sees that a Mitzri is hitting, torturing a Jewish man. And so Moshe Rabbeinu, however he does it, he kills the Mitzri and he buries him. The next day, the pasuk says, this is in Perek Beis, pasuk Yud Aleph, Yud Beis, Yud Gimel, Yud Daled. The next day, it says that Moshe Rabbeinu saw two Jews fighting. And Moshe Rabbeinu said, this is Dasam and Aviram. And Moshe Rabbeinu said to one of the two Jews, Dasam and Aviram, Vayomel Rasha Lama Sakareyecha. And he said, why are you hitting your friend? Dasam and Aviram got into some tizzy, and one of them was hitting the other. And Moshe Rabbeinu said to the Rasha, you're evil. You're hitting another Jew. The next pasuk says that in response, Dasan and Aviram, or Dasan or Aviram said, who made you a boss here? What are you telling us what to do? Mi samcha le'ish v'shovet aleinu. Halahargeni ataymer. Do you intend to kill me? Kasher harakta es hamitzri, like you killed the Mitzri? Ooh, we now have someone here who is making a veiled threat against Moshe. Moshe, what are you doing here? Don't get involved. Don't mix into our business. Yes, we're having a tizzy, and maybe we slapped each other around a bit, but mind your own business, because what are you going to do here? You're going to butt into our business and kill one of us the way you killed that Mitzri yesterday? Oh. Moshe thought that when he killed the Mitzri, nobody knew about it, and it was a secret, and it was over the story. But now he has two Jews who have secret information about him that can get him into deep trouble. He has two potential snitchers on his hand. He has two people who say to him, "You're going to kill us the way you killed that Mitzri?" Now Moshe understands that he's got two potential snitches who can go to Paro and say, "By the way, this Moshe who lives in your palace, he killed a Mitzri." Vayira Moshe. Moshe got scared. Vayoma, and he said, "Achei noda hadover." Now the thing has become known. So the simple pshat in the pasuk is, Vayira Moshe. Moshe got scared. He has potential snitches here. And he said, "Ochei noda hadover." The thing is known. What thing is known? The fact that I killed a Mitzri is now known by two people, and I'm in danger because I got two potential snitches here. That's a simple pshat in the pasuk. Rashi adds a different pshat. Vayomer Moshe, Vayira Moshe. Moshe got scared. Vayomer, and he said, "Ochei noda hadover." Now the thing is known. What thing is known? Not that I killed the Mitzri is known. Achei noda hadover. Now I know why the Jews are in Golus. I just figured it out. And Rashi says as follows. Two Rashis about this. Rashi says, Vayira Moshe. Rashi brings down a medrash. Nodali hadover. Now I understand what's going on here in Mitzrayim. Shayisi tama olav. I was shocked about what's going on here with the Jews in Mitzrayim. Ma chotu Yisrael mikol ayin umas liyos nirdim bavodas pera. What sin did the Jewish people do? What did they do that they deserve to be in exile for so long and pained and tortured and have their children killed? What did they do that made them so worse than the other nations of the world? The other nations of the world are not being subjugated this way. What exactly did the Jews do? Aval roya ani shehem ru'im lakach. But now I understand that the punishment, that the Jews are in exile, they deserve the punishment. So when the pasuk says, Moshe got scared and said, "Achei noda hadover." Oh no, the thing is now known. So the simple pshat is, oh no, the thing is now known. There are two snitches, Dasim and Aviram, know that I killed a Mitzri, and they can go and tell Paro. Rashi's medrash pshat is, Vayira Moshe. Moshe got scared, Vayomer, and he said, Achei noda hadover. Woe is to me, I just figured out why the Jewish people are suffering in Mitzrayim more than any other nation in the world. I just figured it out. I know why they're suffering. The second Rashi complements the first Rashi, and Rashi says, Doglo, this is in Pasuk Yudalit, Perik Beis, Pasuk Yudalit, Doglo, Moshe Rabbeinu was now worried. The Pasuk says, Vayira, he got scared. What was he scared about? So if you learn like the first shot, that it's talking about Dasim and Aviram, Moshe got scared because he realized that there are two potential snitches that can get him in big trouble. That's why he was scared. But if you learn that Achei noda hadover means that Moshe now says, I now understand why Jews have to suffer in Mitzrayim because of an Aveira. We'll soon see what the Aveira was. Moshe Rabbeinu gets scared. What's he scared? So Rashi says, the dog low, he's now very worried. Al Sharab Yisrael Rishoyim Dal Turin. He sees that the Jewish people have snitchers. Dal Turin, Malshinim. There are potential snitchers here. There are those Jews like Dasim and Aviram that in a very, very underhanded way will threaten with Halshana. We have a bracha in Shmon Esrei Malshinim Alti Sikfa, which was referring V'chol Aminim Kreg Yevedu. That's the Birchas Haminim that we once spoke about, the 19th bracha in Shmon Esrei that was added because of the Minim and the Malshinim, the early Catholics. But the Rashi Daltoirin means Malshinim, snitches. The Jewish people have snitches amongst them. Omar, Rashi continues and says, Moshe Rabbeinu said to himself, Me'ata Shema Einam Ru'uyim Lehigael. Maybe these people, these Jewish people, my people, maybe they can never deserve to be redeemed. Maybe this is going to be permanent. They will be in exile forever. And they will be tortured and pained by the Mitzrayim forever. And Moshe was scared and worried about that. Why? Because they were snitches. Now, the Mefarshim ask here, particularly the Maharal, and there's a lot of contradictions that need to be worked through, which we can't work through today. There's a Gemara in the Dorim and Daf Lamed Beis. The Gemara there talks about 3 different things that Avram Avinu did. And because Avram Avinu did those things, his descendants had to go to Mitzrayim and go into Golus. So there, the Gemara in the Dorim Lamed Beis says it's because of 3 things that Avram Avinu did. And then we have all kinds of other midrashim that it had to do with other things. So there's a lot of what seems to be contradictions in why the Jews end up in Mitzrayim and in exile, pained and tortured. Here Rashi says that Moshe Rabbeinu, the Navi, whether he was a Navi at this moment, what level of Nevuah, Ramban Nachmanides talks about it, but Moshe Rabbeinu, the Moshe Rabbeinu, says, I now understand why Jews are oppressed and tortured in this exile is because they have snitchers. And because they have snitchers, not only are they deserving of the Golus, but I'm worried about maybe they will never be redeemed. And so the Maharal deals with this issue. Okay, it's not a nice thing to have snitches. If anybody wants to take a look closely at the anti-snitch rule, I call the anti-snitch rule. Now, there are times where you're allowed to snitch, okay? I don't want anybody, Hashem, walk away from the shin. I said there's an anti-snitch rule. The Torah forbids snitching under all conditions, etc. We're going to leave snitch rules, not for today. But if anybody's interested to see the source material for snitch rules, take a look in Sanhedrin, Daf Yud Aleph, Amud Aleph. There the Gemara discusses snitching. What we call snitching. But what is this terrible Aveira? Okay, it's not a nice thing. Under circumstances when you're not allowed to snitch, you snitch, you did a terrible thing. You did a horrible thing. Say that. But because of snitching, a whole nation deserves to be in Golus and their children killed, their women raped, and the men tortured in work because they're snitches? What is this? Avodah Zarah, Gili Arayis, and Shvichas Damim? What exactly is snitching? Why? Because of snitching, it's not a nice thing. It could be a serious aveira in some circumstances. Aber Avodah Zarah, Gili Arayis, Shvichas Damim, it's not. What is it about snitching that has an equation? Snitchers means you deserve Golus. Okay, snitching is not a nice thing, it's not very, you deserve a punishment. There's some equation here. Moshe says, a light bulb just went off in my mind. I just figured it out. The Jews deserve the Golus. And I'm worried about the fact that they may never be redeemed because snitching equals exile. What is it about snitching equals exile that makes that an equation? Let's leave the second Rashi for now. Let's talk about this snitching Rashi. We'll see how much time we have to discuss the second Rashi. A handout was sent out, I believe. And the handout comes from sefer written by Rabbi Avram Weinroth, which we've used several times. And every week's parsha, he has a synopsis of some marals that talk about that week's parsha. In this week's parsha, the subject that he discusses based upon maral is this Rashi. What exactly is the problem? It's an Aveira. When you're not allowed to snitch, not allowed to stitch, terrible thing, Aveira. But what is the Aveira that it means? You need to go into exile and be tortured and pained, and maybe you can't even be redeemed. And on a page that you don't have, he quotes a medrash that says one of the things that was a zechus for Bnei Yisrael was that they learned how to keep secrets. You take a look at the top of the page of the first page of the handout. At the bottom, it has daf ayin vav. It has an ayin vav in the bottom right hand corner. At the top of the page, after Rav Weinroth quotes the medrash that says one of the zechusim that Klal Yisrael had to get out of Mitzrayim is they learned how to keep secrets and not to be snitches. So at the top of the page, Rav Weinroth writes, "Achein, this kartiot, a person that has discretion, he uses discretion properly. He knows when to say something and when not to say something. He tchuna chashuba. It's a very important characteristic trait to know to use discretion. Should I say it? Should I not say it? Is it a secret? It is not a secret. It's a very important thing. However, b'kol hakavod, is knowing how to keep a secret so important that through learning how to keep a secret, you can be zoicha to be redeemed from golus. And by not knowing how to keep a secret and being a snitcher, you go to golus. So now we have two sides of the coin. We have medrashim that say that Moshe Rabbeinu said, the light bulb just went off. I know why the Jews are in golus, because they're snitches, meaning they don't know how to keep a secret. And I'm worried that they may not even get out of this golus unless they learn how to keep a secret. And then the Medrash also says that one of the schusim that the Bnei Yisrael had to get out of Mitzrayim was they learned how to keep a secret. They learned how to be discretionary with what they said and what they didn't say. So now we come back to, in the middle of the page, he goes through other medrashim about shmiras sod, knowing how to keep a secret. Bottom line, we need to figure out, what does knowing how to keep a secret mean? What is it reflective of the person? What does it show about a person? What does it demonstrate about a person when he knows how to keep a secret, when he can act with that kind of discretion? What does it say about a person who can't keep a secret, who has to blabber everything, who simply can't keep something inside? What does that mean about the person? We're talking about two different people. A person that can act with that discretion. This is not something I need to talk about. And this is the other person who has to blabber about everything that's going on inside him, everything that he's thinking about, everything that he knows about. He has to tell everybody about it. Okay, so now remember where we started. We started today's shir. We talked about the Eitz Hadas Tov Ra. We talked about the guf, which is the superficial part of the person, the neshama, which is his inside, and that's his life-giving source. His panemius, his neshama inside him, is his life-giving source. All the stuff on the outside, the guf, etc., very important, but it is hester panim and it is chitzonius. So those are two words we're going to be using today in shir. The guf is chitzo, it's your external existence. The neshama is your panemius, it's the internal existence, but it's really the engine of what drives everything. So at the bottom of the page, Rav Weinroth writes as follows. This is all based on Maharal, some of which he'll quote. Gulaso shel adam tluya bipnimi yusay. The way a person gets out of an exile, that means it could be a personal exile, it could be a national exile. the way a person can get out of a bad situation, the way a nation can get out of a bad situation, the way a nation can get out of a situation and be zeicha to geula redemption, depends upon a person focusing on penimius. Leitim, sometimes yesh begilui soy haforas imun. Sometimes when a person breaks his silence and he tells secrets, is a haforas imun, a betrayal. You broke a sense of trustworthiness. People trusted you with confidences, and you're unable to keep those confidences. So this is, while it falls under the rubric of snitcher. A snitcher has certain information about someone, and he can't keep it to himself in times and in situations where he should keep it to himself. He can't. So he doesn't have that discretion to keep something a secret, to keep something private. There are other times where it's not like in the case of Moshe Rabbeinu, where Dosam and Aviram saw Moshe do something and they are potential snitches. Sometimes people talk to you and they say, I want to tell you something in confidence. So sometimes they don't even say, I want to tell you something in confidence. But if you're using rational thinking, you understand that they're talking to you about something very sensitive and they want you to keep it private. When you don't keep it private, there's a betrayal and there is a breaking of trustworthiness. You were trusted with a something that someone told you, and you breached that trust. Ach tamid yesh begilui hasoid. There may be the breach of trust, and there may be a betrayal, but always when there is a revealing of something that should remain a secret, mamad shel hachtzana. Hachtzana comes the word chitzonius, outer, the chitzon. What a person is doing is he has something that should remain inside him, and he can't keep it inside. He has to be machtzin it. He has to take it from the inside, and he has to make it something public knowledge. So that which was private, he feels compelled to make everything public. What does that mean? What does that demonstrate about a person? The Maharal says and demonstrates that this is a person who has no panemius. Everything that he has inside, he has to reveal outside. And therefore, this person, that life source of panemius, is derogated because everything that's in there has to be shown to everybody. Everybody's got to know. And therefore, this is a person who breaches panemius and makes it to chitzonius. Such a person is suffering from a problem with his neshama. The neshama is inside, it is the panemius. It's the place where life is given. It's inside. And the neshama teaches us how important the inside is. And the neshama teaches us how we need to focus on the inside and much, much less on the external physical body. A person who has certain knowledge inside and can't keep it inside when he should keep it inside and externalizes the knowledge, this is a person that's demonstrating that his external is more important than his internal. Internally, he's got some important ideas and important information that shouldn't be revealed. And by not revealing it, he keeps it important because he's keeping it in the box it belongs in his panemius. When a person has this need to break open the box and reveal everything, has no discretion, everything needs to be revealed, that means this person really believes deep down that his chitzonius, the outside, externalizing everything, is more important than the internalization of things. That kind of person obviously is going to have major problems in his ruchnius. So, achtomid yesh begilui hasoid mamad shel hachtzana. Always when there's an improper revealing of a secret, It's always a superficialization of an internal matter. Ume'eva shel ha'adam mahavya shel olam ruchni panimi la'olam chitzoni v'gashmi. What this person is demonstrating is that the physical outside world is more important than the inside gruchnius world. Al-kain, therefore, gilui soid gorim l'shiput, when a person doesn't have this discretion and he demonstrates that whatever I know, either I'm going to tell someone, I'm going to threaten you, I'm going to tell someone, those kind of people mean that you will use chitzonius in violation of their panemius, and that means they will use their guf in violation of their neshama. These are people that deserve to be in Golas. Af im ein bo mamad shel haforas imun umeduber b'soid shel adam atzmai. And this is true, Rav Weinrod says, speaking again from the Maharal, even when there's no betrayal of another person, and even when there's no breach of trust with another person, meduber b'soid shel adam atzmai. There are certain things a person knows about himself. He doesn't have to reveal everything about himself to everybody. A person knows all of Shas Baal Peh. Okay? Does he have to go and tell everybody? I want you to know, why don't you ask me Bob Metzia Chaf Beis and I'll say it Baal Peh. If the whole world has to know that you know Shas Baal Peh. There are certain things about the person that the person doesn't have to tell everybody about himself. I'll pause here for two comments. One, the halacha in Masechta Shabbos, it comes from Masechta Shabbos and it's halacha. When we talk about removing something from the private domain and bringing it into the public domain, hotza'ah mershus l'shus, there are certain shi'urim. Let's say a person puts in his hand in his house, he puts a drip of water, one drip of water. And he leaves his house, the private domain, and he walks into a Rishus HaRabim. Has he done the malacha, has he violated the biblical malacha of Hotzah? The answer is no. There are shi'urim for Hotzah. A shi'urim. If a person has a tiny little thing, and then there are shi'urim. If you're carrying seeds, or you're carrying a vessel, you're carrying a liquid, you're carrying food, how much do you have to carry to be guilty of biblical violation of Hotza'ah Mershus Lushus? But then we have a new concept. There's a perek in Masechta Shabbos that's called Hamatzniya. If someone hides things, for whatever reason, he hides it. Then the halacha is, in many cases, he's chayiv b'kol shehu. In other words, if a person takes a half a raisin in his hand and he walks out from his house into the public domain, he hasn't violated the biblical prohibition of Hotzah. I'm using, again, just basic examples. But let's say he takes the half a raisin and he doesn't carry it in his hand. To make the example extreme, he wraps that half a raisin in a handkerchief and he puts that handkerchief deep in his pocket. What has he just shown? What has he just done? He's given that half raisin a special chashivas. And what I'm repeating now is the Avnei Nezer, the Kotzker Rebbe Zatzal's son-in-law's explanation to why a matzniya is chayiv b'kol shehu. If you carry the half raisin like this into the public domain from your house, it's not a biblical violation of Hotzah. But if you take that same half raisin, wrap it up and put it deep in your pocket, that is a biblical violation of Hotzah on Shabbos. Hamatzniya, someone hides things, he's chayiv b'kol shehu. Okay. Again, we're not getting into whole Masechta Shabbos here. What is the concept the Avnei Nezer asks? The same half raisin. And Avnei Nezer says that because we're talking about chashivos, in order to violate Hotzah on Shabbos, you have to carry things from the private domain to the public domain that is consequential. It has some importance to it. It is choshuv. So if you're walking around the Rosh Hashanah with a half a raisin like this, there's nothing choshuv about it. But if you take that same half raisin, wrap it in a handkerchief, put it in your pocket, you're now showing that that half raisin is very important to you because you've wrapped it up and put it in your pocket. And now, because it's hidden, hamatzaniya, if you hide it, now you've shown that it's something very important to you. And for that, you're chayiv, because you have personally demonstrated that this thing is so important to you that you wrapped it up and put it in your pocket. And Avnei Nezer explains that that is the concept. A person that's matzniya, he hides things and keeps it private. He gives these things a special chashivus. And the same thing is true about the person himself. A person doesn't need to go around the whole day ringing his own bell. The more a person rings his own bell, the more he takes these important things and he externalizes them. I want the whole world to know that. I want the whole world to know that. You want the whole world to know that? You just take in your internal life-giving source and externalize it into the physical world. Why are you doing that? Because you're a physical person. No matter how much Torah you have, the more you need to publicize it in an improper way, the more you, instead of internalizing your Torah, you're externalizing your Torah and you're making it virtually valueless. This is true for the person himself, and that's the last words on the page. We'll even talk about the person himself. The person himself also has to have discretion, what the world needs to know about him and what they don't need to know about him. We live in a time, second comment, we live in a time where it appears that people do not have any sense of privacy anymore. What does it mean they don't have a sense of privacy? Everybody has to know everything. People take selfies and then they upload it and the whole world has to see what they're doing second by second of the day. This second I was at a birthday party, then 10 minutes later I was in the mall, and then a half an hour later I was in the car, and then 2 hours later I was at the Tel Aviv beach, and then 3 hours later I was climbing here and I was doing it. And the whole world needs to know. What does the whole world need to know? And this is a pressure that's brought into the world, peer pressure, whatever it is, that's brought into the world. And this is a source of golus. The idea that a person can't keep anything private about himself is a source of golus. This whole idea was unknown not so long ago. People did not have cell phones, as an example. And again, please don't go away from the Shia saying that Lublin said cell phones are terrible, kosher phones, non-kosher. I didn't say anything about kosher, non-kosher. I'm saying the idea. We used to walk around and there was no phones. And Hashem, there was an emergency. You dug for a quarter in your pocket and you looked for the nearest phone booth. And when you got to the phone booth, you just hope that kids didn't rip off the receiver. But that's how we lived, if you can remember. When I say a quarter, that's used to be a dime. When I was in yeshiva, my parents always made sure that I had 2 dimes in my pocket when I went to yeshiva. In case I had to call home, there were different phone booths in yeshiva. I had 10 cents to call home. There's no, and therefore, people live discretionary lives. A discretionary life means something just happened. Do I need to call home? Something just happened. Do I need to call my parent? Something just happened. Do I need to tell my sister and brother? Something just happened. Do I need to tell all my friends? That discretion was thrown out of the box. But as soon as something happens, I go to my little device, to my WhatsApp group, or whatever other group, whatever other system you're using, and in a split second, I can tell all my family, all my friends, everybody that I know what just happened to me. And maybe they'll need to know. Maybe they don't need to know. But that's not these devices are meant to momentarily tell the whole world what's happening to you in real time. So the idea of there are things that we should tell people and things that we don't need to tell people literally has been lost today, this discretion, because it's everywhere. You don't have to decide whether you need to tell someone. Well, something happened to me. The nearest phone booth is 3 blocks away. It can wait till I get home. I'll tell my wife. It can wait till I get home. I'll tell my brother. There's no such thing anymore. Something happened. I'm telling everybody right away because I have something in my hand to do it. The idea that we don't have this discretion anymore, should I say or shouldn't I say, is a terrible, terrible thing that's happened to us here in very recent times, and it really is a source of goals. And this is what the Maharal is telling us. People can't even keep secrets about themselves. Everybody has to know everything. And the problem with it is you're externalizing that which needs to be internalizing, which means you're turning into gashmias, external, that which should have remained internal, and ruchnias. You're turning your neshama chas v'shalom into a guf. People that live like that will go into golus. And then Moshe Rabbeinu said that there's a problem. They may have to stay in golus if they can't resolve this problem. We go to the next page, on page Ayin Zayin. So segulas hashmira al hasod. The secret that's in the segula of knowing how to keep a secret. The secret of knowing how to keep a secret. What do you gain by knowing how to be discretionary? Hagashmius nesuna l'shibud v'ilo haruach hapnimi chofshit. Lachein shmiras hasod hi abasis l'geula v'ilo hachtzana hi gashmit v'goremes liyisurim u'l'shibud. This is a principle in the Ramchal, in the Maharal. The physical body is subject to shibud. The physical body is subject, lo leinu, to disease. The physical body is subject to suffering. The physical body is subject to death. And therefore, this physical body is subject to many, many things. And therefore, it isn't entirely free. The physical body is not a free thing. We think that we have this freedom with our bodies. The body itself, compared to the neshama, the body is like a slave. It's enslaved to disease, death, all desires, the need to eat, the need to sleep. Neshama doesn't have any of these needs. So whereas a person's body and his gashmias, the need to eat, the need to sleep, it enslaves the body. The neshama is not enslaved by anything. So when you compare, the Maharal says, the body to the soul, the body is like a slave, and the soul is like a free person. Lachein shmiras hasod hi abasis legeula v'hachtzan hi gashmis v'goremes lishum l'shib. Now think this through. It's quite simple equation now. If a person creates in his own life a system where his external body, he demonstrates that externalizing what's inside, which means his external body is more important to him than the internal neshama. Okay, what does the body represent? A body is an enslaved creation. And what is the neshama? The neshama is a free bird. It's not subject to all those things of the guf. So when a person takes those things that are internal and he externalizes them in a non-discretionary way, what has he demonstrated? I like the body. I like the external. Well, you like the body, you like the external. You know what the body is? The body's a slave. You like slavery? Fine, we'll put you into slavery. And that's Moshe Rabbeinu's, the Maharal explains, I now understand why the Jewish people are in Golus. They have these potential snitchers. And these potential snitchers are demonstrating that they have that these people, Klal Yisrael, have a lack of discretion about what to say and what not to say. And when you lack that discretion and you can externalize everything that's internal, that means you're showing your guf is more important than your neshama. And if the guf is more important than the neshama, that will be golus, because golus is slavery, and guf over neshama means slavery, because the guf is a slave. And if you like the guf, you'll get the guf and you'll be a slave. On the other hand, when the Jewish people finally learn how to keep a secret, the Medrash says, that means that they learned how to reverse that process. Wait a second.
Yeah.
We don't say everything about ourselves. We learn how to keep a secret. We don't have to be snitchers. We have the discretion of when to talk and when not to talk. That reverses the process, and it means now I understand my neshama is more important than my guf. If your neshama is more important than your guf, then you value freedom over slavery. Now you're zeicha to...
That's why I'm afraid. You realize it.
We don't have time to go through the rest of the Maharal, but you have the 3 pages. Rav Weinrod quotes different places in the Maharal. The Rabbi Akiva, he quotes on this page. Rabbi Akiva says in Pirkei Avos, Siog lachochma shsika, the gate that keeps a wise person wise is silence. Now, we always think that in order to become wise, you have to talk a lot. You debate people, you exchange ideas, that's all good. But there's a siyog l'chachma shsika. There's also a certain chachma that only comes when you know how to stay quiet. You can listen, but more importantly, not only do you listen, but sometimes you can actually internalize for yourself and understand that although there's this deep pressure, I need to tell everybody. And you can think about it for a couple of minutes and say, do I need to tell everybody? And if I need to tell someone, who, under what circumstances, how many people, that pattern of thinking means that you're now giving a chashivas to the internal idea, and you don't want to simply trash it and cheapen it by externalizing it to the whole world. And now there's a chachma. That is a chachma to shasika. There's a chachma to know when to remain silent. And then at the bottom of the page, the Rav Weinrod quotes the Maharal, the whole issue about why Moshe turned out to be a kvat peh. We all know that he burned his lips, his tongue with this coal in front of Paro, and it was very difficult for him to speak. Maharal has an entire explanation about why Moshe Rabbeinu became a kvad peh ukvad lashon. It was hard for him to talk. To the extent that it was hard for him to talk, it was hard for him and became very difficult for him to externalize his internal, that which was that who he was internally, this great Moshe Rabbeinu. He became the un of Ma'od. He became the most humble person that ever lived, because part of the reason is that he became a kvad peh. It was difficult for him to talk, physically difficult for him to talk. And that's why Moshe Rabbeinu said, Rabbanu Shalom, Aaron needs to speak for me. I can't speak. Not speaking is a next step in the Madrega, according to Maharal, in Moshe Rabbeinu's development. Moshe Rabbeinu's continued development on his level. Now, nobody wants to go burn their tongue and make it hard to talk. There are other ways to give yourself discretion. But Moshe Rabbeinu, his level jumps because he begins to become such a panemius, such an internalized person, that he physically finds it difficult to even externalize the thought. It's a gift from HaKadosh Baruch Hu that Moshe Rabbeinu can teach Torah. Otherwise, it's difficult for him to speak. Because of that difficulty in speaking, Moshe Rabbeinu develops into the most humble person that ever lived. And he becomes one of the factors that makes him Moshe Rabbeinu, the Maharal explains. On the last page of the handout, Adam Magushim Marbetvorm, a person that's a very physical oriented person, will talk a lot. The next paragraph talks about Odom Magusham Ein Hashem Asai, a person that's a very physical person. He's into his physical desires, etc. He lives the Gashmias. He doesn't know how to keep a secret. Everything has to be externalized because that's who he is. He's a physical, external person, and he can't keep things inside in his panemius. Finally, the Rav Weinrod quotes the Maharal at the bottom of the page that Jewish people have this capacity to be shomrei sod, to understand the act of discretion. Through that act of discretion, should I say it, should I not say it, my external versus my internal, which is really the foundation of the Maharal. Understanding guf neshama, as we've learned in the Das Tavunas, is a guf, there's neshama. The neshama is the life-giving source for the guf. The guf is not a life-giving source. We need to emphasize the neshama over the guf. And by doing that, we are masakin the Eitz Hadas Tov V'Ra, where Adam Arisha decided the external look of the tree was more important than the internalization that he may die. And the Maharal in this discussion quotes a Gemara in Chulan and Daf Kuflam and Gimel and Beis. The Gemara says, Stam Goy Mar Bedvorim. A Stam Goy. Now there are exceptions to the rule, but a Stam Goy is a person that will talk a lot. What does it mean, talk a lot? A Goyim talk a lot? Yeah, nay. It means that they talk more than they need to. A Goy doesn't know how to act with discretion. What do I need to say? What do I don't need to say? And they become their own self-PR agents, and it's all about themselves, and it's all about the whole world, knowing how great they are, etc., etc. And Jewish people have the midah of tznius. We said earlier that there's a parag in Masechta Shabbos that's called hamatzniya, when you hide something. And when you hide something, you make it important. And when you make it important, it becomes a chutzah in Shabbos, even if it's less than the shir. That parag in Shabbos that's called hamatzniya is from the word tznius. Tznius means to hide something. And for a woman, that has its own meaning, tznius. But if you want to know what keeping a secret means in tznius, we have the very famous medrash. Rachel was zoicha to Yosef, and obviously Binyamin, she was zoicha to Yosef. What's the chusam that she had? The Gemara has a discussion about this, and Rashi brings it down. The lashon of the Chazal is tznius shehoisa bo b'Rachel. Rachel had tznius. What happened? Leah didn't have tznius. Leah didn't dress properly. That's not what the Chazal are talking about. Chazal say Leah had tznius because on the night that, or on the day that Yaakov was getting married, and Yaakov knew that Lavan would try to trick him and give him Leah. So Yaakov gave Rachel certain signals to give him so that he would know it's Rachel, not Leah. Rachel, the Gemara says, Chazal tell us, realized right before the chuppah that in fact her father Lavan was putting Leah under the chuppah. And within a couple of minutes, or whatever, hours, very soon, Leah is going to be shamed because she doesn't have the signals. And so Rachel tells Leah, these are the signals you need to give Yaakov. And because she gave those signals to Yaakov, she was zocheh to marry Yaakov, she was zocheh to Yosef. And the Gemara calls that tznius. Now we think tznius means to keep things hidden. And here we have Rachel, what it looks like, violating a confidence. Yaakov told her these are the private signals, and she gives it to Leah. And the Gemara says because Rachel had the tznius and gave the signals to Leah, that she was zocheh to what she was zocheh to. What tznius are we talking about here? We just said that everything has to be kept secret. Rachel had tznius, because tznius, as we just explained through the Maharal, means discretion. When yes and when no. There are things we tell people, there are things we don't tell people. Rachel weighed the scales here. Should this be kept a secret? Or achshav tikolim achoisi. If I don't tell her, my sister is going to be shamed publicly. And she balanced those scales, and she came out with the right conclusion, but she balanced the scale. The point about Rachel here is she, as we mentioned earlier, she's thought about it. Do I give away the secret? It's a secret. Do I not give away the secret? Leah will be publicly shamed. And she balances this and thinks it through and says, yes, the right thing to do here is to give Leah the signals. And that is called tznius. Tznius doesn't mean I'm always secretive. Tznius means I'm a person who weighs the need for secrecy. Should I? Shouldn't I? The bottom line here is we're in a generation where this Maharal jumps off the page and is talking to us. The Maharal is explaining that the Golus, the way Moshe understood the Golus was because of Dosim and Aviram demonstrating that these are a people who are daltoirin. They're snitches. They don't know how to keep a secret. They don't have the discretion. Everything that they know about anybody, they have to tell about everybody. And they have to tell everyone. And anything they know about themselves, they have to make sure that everybody knows about it. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, "Oy, I'm really worried now. First of all, I know why these people are in Golus. And second of all, I don't know if they'll ever get out. Because if a person externalizes the internal, he's demonstrating the Gashmi is more important than the Ruchni, and the Gashmi physical guf is a slaved entity. It's a slaved creation. The Neshama is a free creation. Now, when someone says, I like my guf and I will externalize the internal, he's saying, I love the guf, I love slavery. That will cause a Golus. When a person reverses that pattern and says, that which belongs inside stays inside, only that which belongs outside will be outside. When a person learns that, he can be Zeicha to Geula. When a people do not know that, they unfortunately end up in Mitzrayim in a bitter Golus. And when they learn to reverse that, they end up with a Gula. We should be Zeicha to a Gula Shalem, B'tzayin Hashem Mamish today. For we live in a generation where this, as we mentioned, this idea of everything I do and everything that's going on in my life. There's a family WhatsApp, there's the building WhatsApp, there's the neighborhood WhatsApp, everything that's happening every second of the day besides the Bizbuz Hazman. And again, please don't walk away from the Shia saying, Lubling said everybody should cancel their WhatsApp. I didn't say that I'm not trying to be an extremist here. Again, Rachel told her sister about the signals, and she is called a tzanua. So there are things that belong in the public domain, things that don't. Need to think it through. Should I be a member of the neighborhood WhatsApp? Do I want to hear everything that's going on about everybody else? Do I need to tell everybody about what's going on with me? Do I need to be a member of my building WhatsApp? Do I need to be a member of the family WhatsApp with 150 cousins and uncles? Everybody's writing what's going on with them, and everybody's responding, and everybody's commenting. How much do I need to be involved in this externalization of my private life? The more we learn about this discretion, the more we're zeicha to Gula Shalem Yameinu. B'tzayin Hashem Mamish today. All Yid need Yeshua Shav Yeshuas, all Yid need Refuah Shav Refuas, all Yid need Nechama Shav Nechamas, all Yid need Bracha Shav Brachas, the Parshas Shemos Mashpia, Bracha, Tzlacha, and Klal Yisrael. The whole world should be in peace, and Klal Yisrael should be in peace. Through Bias Mashiach, Tzidkeinu, Mamish, B'tzayin Hashem today, we can build the Beis HaMikdash, give the Matzis HaShekel, and bring Kabbanis today, Mamish. All Yidden need the Yidden Refuas, Moshe Zelig, Ben Rezel, Refuah Shalema, B'Saych Shachar LiYisrael, Liva Malka, Bas Chaya Brayna, Refuah Shalem, B'Saych Shachar LiYisrael, Yosef Chaim Ben Shoshana Menucha, Refuah Shalem, B'Saych Shachar LiYisrael, Refuah Nevesh, Refuah Saguf, Hashta Bakalos, Man Krib, and Amar, Amen. Yeshua's, Refuas, Geula, Brachas all come from the Rebbeinu Shalom with our Hishtadlus, which Rebbeinu Shalom blesses. And only Rebbeinu Shalom can make these things happen. He's the Echad, Yachad, Umiyuchad, when he wants them to happen, how he wants them to happen. If it's a Shliach, only through the Shliach that he wants it to happen through. We believe this and internalize this and live this. We're doing a Gilui HaYichud. The Gilui HaYichud, slowly but surely, Shem today, we're trying this already for thousands of years. Should come to the critical mass of Gilui HaYichud, where Shemar Shalom Ksem Mashiach, Mamash today, B'rit Sinai, Tzayin Hashem, to finish the Gilui HaYichud, be Zoicha, to be healthy, happy, dancing to greet Mashiach Tzidkenu, Mamish today. Everybody have a wonderful Shabbos. I believe the Maharal that we talked about today is so important for our generation, where everything has to be known by everyone around us. And that, according to the Maharal, that kind of externalization of the internal is what loyaleno leads to bitter gullus, and learning discretionary analysis of what yes and what no can bring the Geula. We should be zeich the Geula b'her b'meinu. Amen. Sei gesund.